What's up, guys? Today we're going to be having an introduction to metric measurement where we're going to be developing our metric measuring skills. As a reminder, this icon, it means you need to copy the information that's on the slide into your notebook. So measurement systems. There's two types of measurement systems here in the United States. The first is the standard or customary, where it's based on whole numbers and fractional parts of, and the second is the metric, which is the international system, and it's based on the number 10 or power of 10, and that is the system we are going to be going over today. So a little background. Here in the United States, the US has switched to the metric system with sporting events such as the Olympics, the military, in medicine, and in scientific studies. And this is why you need to get to know the metric system. So the metric system, and as a reminder, make sure you have your notebook out, is used with millimeters and centimeters as well as decimals when you're writing out your measurements. So 1 millimeter equals 0.1 centimeters. 5 millimeters is 0.5 centimeters, and then 10 millimeters is written as 1 centimeter. The metric system is much easier to use than US standard system because it was based on a decimal system or power of 10. Therefore, you don't have to remember all the different conversions. You only have to remember a short list of prefixes that represent the powers of 10. So some common units in the metric system are millimeters, or mm. 10 millimeters equals 1 centimeter. You have cm, which is centimeters, which 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. And then you have meters, which is m, and 1,000 meters equals 1 kilometer. So kilometers is km. Remember, make sure you write this down in your notebook. It's going to be very important. So steps in using the metric system. The first step is to count the number of whole centimeters. These are the larger lines within the numbers. The second step is to count the number of lines after the whole number, which are the smaller lines. Those are the millimeters. And the third step is to make sure you put it in correct terms. So are you measuring millimeters or centimeters? Or do you need to list both? So here are the steps in converting for using the metric system. Step number 1 is converting metric measurements can be done by multiplying or dividing by 10, 100, or 1,000, and so on. You need to follow these steps. Step number 1 is to count the number of zeros in the number you are multiplying or dividing by. Step number 2 is if you are multiplying, you're going to move the decimal to the right that number of places. And then step number 3 is if you are dividing, you're going to move the decimal to the left that number of places. So how does this work? Well, let's practice. So we're looking at this chart. This is a standard metric ruler, and you can see that we're going up to 7 centimeters. Okay, and the first one is going to be A. So what is the distance from the end of the ruler to A? Go ahead and write it down in your notebook if you have a chance. So it's 4 millimeters. And if we look at the ruler, you can see that when you count over, it's from the end, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So how you're going to write that down is either 4 millimeters equals 0.4 centimeters. So what is B? If we look at B, we can see that we have the step number 1, which was to write down the whole number, which is 1. Step number 2 is to write down the number of small dashed lines, which is 9. So it's going to be 19 millimeters or 1.9 centimeters. Distance for C, we look at this, the whole number is 3. The small dashed lines are 7, so it's going to be 37 millimeters or 3.7 centimeters. You're getting the hang of this by now, right? So D is 6 plus 3, so 63 millimeters or 6.3 centimeters. And then the last one is E, and so we know that it's 7, and then we can see that it's on 3, again, the small dashed line. So it's going to be 73 millimeters or 7.3 centimeters. Okay, so let's review. So again, if we look at our dashed line, step 1 is to count our whole centimeters. So our whole centimeters is 1. Step 2 is to count the number of lines after that whole number. So for this example, that would be 2. So if we're step 3, we're being asked for centimeters or millimeters in your answer. So if we need to find our centimeters, then it would be 1.2 centimeters. And then you can leave that answer alone. Now, if it's being asked to find millimeters, then you need to take that answer and multiply it by 10, because every 10 millimeters makes up 1 centimeter. So you take 1.2 centimeters times 10 equals 12 millimeters. You saw how we moved that decimal place to the right, 1. So just like when we talked about on the initial rules, every time that you're converting from centimeters to millimeters, when you're doing multiplication, you're going to be moving your decimal place to the right. If we were going from millimeters to centimeters, we would be moving that decimal place to the left. Let's try another one. So let's practice. We're going to find the centimeters. So step 1, again, is to count the whole numbers. 1. Step 2 is to count the number after, which is 7. So we have 1.7 centimeters. And then step 3 is, are you being asked for centimeters or millimeters? If you're being asked for centimeters, you're going to leave it alone. So are we being asked for centimeters? Yes, we are. And so the answer is 1.7. Now, in this example, we're being asked for millimeters. So again, step number 1 is 1. Step number 2 is the 7. Step number 3 is we're being asked for millimeters, so we have to convert. Okay, so we're going to be multiplying by 1.7 times 10, and we're going to come out to not centimeters, right? Not 1.7 centimeters, it's going to be 17 millimeters. Okay, so if you need to review that, go ahead and rewind the video and watch that one more time. But every time that we're being asked to convert from centimeters to millimeters, we are multiplying. Okay, so now we're asking for centimeters. And so if we're being asked for centimeters here, we're looking for 15.5. That is going to be the answer. Now we're going to leave that answer alone. The next one we're going to be doing is millimeters. So we're looking at this step number 1, which is find our whole number, which is going to be 2. Step number 2 is going to be count the number of lines after that whole number, which in this example is going to be, that's right, 4. And so we have 2.4 centimeters. Now step number 3, remember, is you're being asked for centimeters, right? Or you've been given, you're figured out for centimeters, but you're being asked for millimeters. So you need to convert that centimeter answer into millimeters. So you're going to take 2.4 and multiply it times 10. So 2.4 would not be the correct answer in this example. We'd be multiplying 2.4 times 10, and we'd be coming out to 24 millimeters. Again, every time that we're converting from centimeters to millimeters, we are multiplying. If we are being asked to convert from millimeters to centimeters, we would be dividing and moving that decimal place to the left by that number of zeros. So, a summary of today's lesson: what to remember about the metric system: each line is a millimeter, and every 10 lines is a centimeter. To convert from centimeters to millimeters, you're going to multiply by 10. And if you're converting from millimeters to centimeters, you will be dividing by 10. So get ready to practice